Congratulations once more.
Thank you. I now request Ms. Malavika Harita to please take the stage and share a few words of wisdom and experience with us. Malavika, ma'am as I call her, is passionate about the power of communication, storytelling, and digital marketing. Teaching, mentoring startups, and empowering women is what drives her. Malavika founded Brand Circle in 2018, a consulting firm working in these areas. She is also a resident mentor at NSR Cell of IIMB. In her earlier avatar, she founded and ran Saatchi & Saatchi Focus in India for about 25 years. She has 36 years of experience in brand consulting, strategic planning, communication, entrepreneurship, and training after an MBA from IIM Bangalore. Malavika was one of the first Gurukul Chevening scholars to study in the London School of Economics. She is also the first woman to win the Distinguished Alumni Award from IIM Bangalore. She is on the board of governors of the Indian Institute of Management in Visakhapatnam, on the governing council of Mount Carmel College, and on the advisory board of NSR Cell IIM Bangalore. Malavika was president of the IIM Alumni Association and the Advertising Club of Bangalore. She has been teaching marketing and communication at various postgraduate institutes in India and abroad for the last 26 years. And I must say, add from my side, her own personal story of whatever I've heard in her sessions is as powerful as the stories that she spins and shares for herself and for her clients and their audiences. As a mentor, she has been very inspiring with very grounded, practical advice, which is steeped in her own personal experience. So please join me in welcoming Malavika Harita.
Thank you, Shobha. And good evening, everybody. Long time since I've spoken to a live audience, as Suraj Mani said. I'm so used to seeing screens on my computer, which is what I've been doing for the last 2 years. So I was actually a little nervous. And Zoom allows you, people to see only the top of you. So my paunch has grown. And so I said, what the hell? I got myself a longer dupatta. So the paunch is now covered, and here I am. Thanks to WiREnet and Shobha for inviting me today to speak to all of you. I would like to wish all members of the founding team, Laila, Sunita, Aishwarya, Shobha, herself, Renuka, and Devanshi, all the best in their endeavors to change the status quo in an industry which is perhaps very traditional and, if I may use the word, paternalistic. Historically, perhaps for good reasons, which have kind of got embedded in the culture of the construction industry. But I'm glad things are changing, and as the people who spoke before me said, it's going to take a long time, but I think we're slowly getting there. And I don't think we should be impatient. Change is always slow and painful. And I've seen that in the last so many years that I've been working. I probably was at IIM Bangalore before most of you were born. And my students say, I tell my students that they weren't even probably thought of when I passed out of IIM Bangalore. Shobha told me that there were going to be men in the audience, and I see quite a few of you. So I did a little judicious editing of my speech, and because I didn't want to offend their delicate sensibilities. So gentlemen, don't worry. This is not going to be a man-bashing session. In fact, I love men. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm too old to love them in any other way, but I love men. I love that they pretend to be cool dudes. I love that they pretend to be tough. I love their fragility. And I love looking after them. I've done this all my life, and I continue to do so. I love Suraj's song about Emma Watson. We can't survive without you guys, all right? Can you imagine a life without men? How boring it would be. We'd have nobody to bitch about, we'd have nobody to fight with, and who would be blamed? And if you've trained your men well, which I'm sure you all have, they listen without saying a word. Right? So it gives me goosebumps to think of a world without men. I may sound very old-fashioned, but I strongly believe in our old Indian concept of the Ardhanarishwara. And I think there is a masculine and feminine side in all of us. And I think it's up to us to embrace it and balance it. And the balance is yours to choose in today's world of fluid gender. I think it's ours to balance the way we want it to be. But I think it's a great thing that has happened. And I strongly believed in it. I believed in it all my life. I have the reverse problem with men, actually. I strongly believe that I'm better than most of the men I know. And since I don't mean to be boastful here, but since I am a quintessential alpha female, you could see that from my size as well, I have to actually tone down things a bit, right? Because otherwise I tend to intimidate both men and women. And so that's something I've learned the very hard way, right? But it's a good lesson to learn. I grew up in an army family and was never sure whether my mother was the army officer or my dad. In fact, we used to call her the general, and I think she outranked him in every way, yeah, except by rank. And so we always called her the general and my father the brigadier. One of the worst reprimands that my mother would dish out is, "Don't be such a girl." Right? And this was her biggest insult to me, because she always believed that I should never make my gender an excuse for anything that I wanted to do. She always said, if you're being lazy, then say so. Don't blame being a woman for not doing something. So that is the kind of background I grew up with. Jokes apart, at my age, I am completely gender agnostic. And after so many years in corporate life, and now in my new avatar as a mentor and a teacher, I see pretty much the same behavior patterns, the same vulnerabilities, the same insecurities in all the men and women that I meet every day. Frankly, I don't see a difference. I think some of the men, young men that I teach and mentor, are as vulnerable as we are as women. And I think this is something we should appreciate, because life is actually getting tremendously complicated. It's not easy anymore, either as a man or as a woman. And I'm sure the men in the audience will agree with me when I say that. It's just the same. We all have the same problems. So I'm frankly gender agnostic at this point. Of course, I've come through a lot to arrive at this stage. You're all young. You still have to go through my journey. My son has instructed me very strictly, and he's the only guy who towers over me and whom I'm a little bit scared of, right? Because he knows which buttons to press. So when he says, "Amma," I tend to listen. He has instructed me, and I better do this before I forget, to start every lecture of mine with an apology. And that's what I'm going to do right now, before I forget. So sorry, I am very blunt, and I think Shobha will agree with that. A lot of my mentees will agree with that. I'm very blunt, I'm very outspoken, and I'm politically very incorrect. I have very strong views on most things, and I also follow those views myself. They are my personal beliefs. The only thing I've learned at 63 to do is to keep my mouth shut occasionally. So I don't offer my opinions as I used to when I was your age. You know, I was one of those activist types. I don't do that anymore. I only ask, I only speak when I'm asked to, like at this session. So forgive me for that. I come from a very different generation where you were encouraged to have an opinion, healthy debate, and argument. And we still remain friends in spite of all the deep arguments that we had with other people. I miss that a lot because I believe strongly that healthy debate and argument is a part of any learning process. It makes me very upset today that people are getting so hypersensitive and you're not permitted to have a different opinion, agree to disagree, and still remain friends. And I find that, I find that a tragedy, really. Anyway, that's me. So don't take anything I say today amiss. As we say in Karnataka, I am like that only. When I was talking to Shobha what to say today, I thought about changing the narrative, and I initially started with saying, ladies, let's change the narrative today. And then, of course, with due deference to all the gentlemen, I decided to change that. And I said, why do I think our narrative needs to be changed? And what are the 13 things you can do to change it? I'm a very practical person, so I believe in listicles. And I think it makes sense if I don't just give you gyan, but and inspire you like Insta Maggie noodles, because inspiration nowadays goes away in 2 minutes. But I thought I'd tell you, explain to you some stuff that you can actually do to ensure that you can change the narrative. Why 13? Because I said, let's change the narrative about that being an unlucky number, right? So here goes. I want to start by trying to understand why we follow someone else's narrative and not write our own, even though we are clearly unhappy and uncomfortable following this someone else's narrative, whoever that someone else is. So when I was thinking about it yesterday, in no particular order, I'm going to be politically incorrect here again. Are we following someone else's narrative because we are brainwashed? Are we doing that because we are plain lazy? Do we really care? Are we frightened of what they will say? And I will come to this in a minute, a very important part of my narrative. Are we scared to rock the boat of status quo? And is it easier to take a traditional path, especially if we have a convenient whipping boy, AKA boss, mother, or men in general? Okay? Are we scared of failure? Is it real or perceived family pressure that makes us follow the beaten path? And do we like being a victim? Some of us do enjoy that, right? And as I was thinking, my experience tells me, and I've gone through all of this, okay? So I'm not, these are not some things that have come out of the blue. My experience tells me that our hesitation in writing our own narrative, and this is man or woman, is a bit of everything that I mentioned before, but primarily it is us. It is because of our fears, our insecurities, our inertia, our perceptions about what other people will think, and also overthinking the consequences of any action that we take. I call it paralysis through analysis. And after 36 years in corporate life, I can say it abounds there. We paralyze every decision by analyzing it to death. And I liked what you said, let us enjoy the uncertainty. Let us just do things because our gut says we should. And a lot of times we don't do that because we suppress our gut instinct. I promised you 13 things you could do to change status quo, right? I had many more, but I've cut it down in interest of time. And while I may use female examples because I am a woman, my recommendations are actually gender agnostic and for anyone in this audience. The first thing is, you need to understand why you want to change things. Are you trying to change things because you really want to? Like some of the esteemed panelists spoke about, are you really trying to change it because you want to? Or are you doing it because everyone else thinks you should? And I find that a lot of people sort of preach change or talk about change because it's a good box to be ticked. And this is somewhat like this whole thing about inclusion, diversity, and gender equality. It's a box to be ticked. It's good to do. It's a nice thing to talk about on the cocktail circuit. Do we really mean it? I'm not so sure. So to do this, to understand this, you really need to know yourself. And being a management person, and you may want to look this up, there are three frameworks that I strongly recommend all of you do. One is SWOT, which is our famous strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and this is for you personally. I like another one which has come up, which is a variation, which is called TOWS, right? Which is basically changing your threats and opportunities, your threats into opportunities, and using your strengths to overcome your weaknesses. I thought this TOWS was a very, very interesting format because it actually gives you a plan of action. One of the things I did when I decided to leave corporate life, leave Saatchi, and do something else, and this was not just because I'd been 25 years there, but because I decided that my ikigai had changed. And this is another very neat Japanese tool. I love the way Japanese do things so elegantly and simply. I'm sure some of you have read the book on ikigai. But I think the ikigai actually gave me my new purpose in life, which is to share my knowledge and my experiences. It's great that everyone wants to hear about it, yeah? And that was the reason that I decided to actually step out of corporate life and teach and mentor, because I wanted to make a difference. Not probably selfishly in a sense, because it gave me great happiness and satisfaction. And also thanks to my corporate career, I wasn't doing any of this for the money. It was just in a way to give back. But I get much more, believe me, from my teaching and mentoring than I give to my students. Someone mentioned this in one of the earlier sessions, which says, believe in yourself. We are not helpless, nobody is, especially women. We're definitely not helpless. And I don't want any of you to make your sex or circumstances an excuse for not doing something. I loved what the earlier panelists said, which was saying, find solutions, not more problems. And this is what we tend to do when we don't want to do something, right? So your motto should be nothing is impossible, which is something I used at Saatchi a lot, and not nothing is possible, which our typical government bureaucrat uses. Or you use if you don't want to do something. I've used this many times, so I say it with confidence. Build your own identity, right? That is independent of gender, marital status, your father, your husband, your brother, your son, your wife, or your mother. You need an independent entity for yourself. And I think we're not trained to do this. We always follow someone else. For example, I'm just wondering why in all my identity documents, I'm seen as the daughter of someone so-and-so. I mean, not that I didn't like my father, I loved him. But I'm wondering why I'm the daughter of some so-and-so. I'm me, right? And that is what I think a lot of our parents and you as parents should inculcate in your child, that you are what you are. Don't be apologetic about it, right? And this is very, very important for all of us. I have been trying to find they, right? This started when I was 19. My father passed away in an accident the day I finished my degree. And I had this old aunt who said, why aren't you doing all the death rituals? I don't believe in them, so we never did them, nor did my mom. And she said, they are not going to like it. And they, being my father's spirit, is going to hover around us for the rest of our lives. And I remember telling her, Auntie, it's fine because he loved us, right? So I'd love to have him around for a few more years. She never spoke to me again. But ever since then, I have been trying to search for this mythical they. And I've come to a firm conclusion that they don't exist. I think it's a very smart Indian parental technique Or I used it once or twice on my son when I suddenly realized what I was doing. But it's a very smart Indian parental technique to keep your kids in line without getting unpopular with them. So instead of telling them, you idiot, do what I'm telling you to do, you say, what will they say? Right? And I think it's a very smart thing. We Indians are pretty smart, right? We know how to do stuff without soiling our hands. For those of you who work, and this is really true for a lot of women, I don't want you to feel guilty. You can do what you can do at work and at home. You don't need to feel guilty that you're not giving your best to your work or you're not giving your best to your kids, because it is true, families put a huge amount of pressure on you, and you begin to feel this guilt thing. Am I doing the right thing? Am I looking after my child? What's going to happen? I'm a single mother. I brought up my son. He's a very successful doctor. Brought him up with the help of my mom. So he had two moms, actually, poor fellow. But I never felt guilt, because I realized that if I didn't earn, the boy would have nothing to eat, right? So I never felt guilty about that. But at the same time, I was there for all the important milestones in his life, though I used to travel a lot. I had a lovely mother who I think was a much better mother to him than I could have ever been. I'm not maternal, as you can see by nature, but I think she was a great mother. The other thing I did, and this is a practical tip, not just for the ladies in this room, but also the gentlemen. My son keeps saying I'm OCD, I'm not. But what I tell you that I've done in my life, which is why I have so much time to think and do the things I do, is I'm very organized. I'm actually super organized in my practical life, right? So I'm not rushing out to buy milk because we've run out, or bread or eggs, or whatever, pay bills. I get all that organized, and I've sort of taped it. I spend a couple of hours a week setting menus, everything. I get everything organized. So then I have the rest of the time to actually be a better me. And everything runs like clockwork. I also have a wonderful staff. So weekly shopping, Saturday is the day. Maintenance, personal repairs and maintenance once a month. I go and hang about the beauty parlor and figure out which color I'm going to paint my nails and do girlish things like that, which I really enjoy. Also challenge my hairdresser on Candy Crush. She's always better at it than me, right? So very bad, makes me feel really inferior. But I have great fun. I enjoy that part. But I also keep my life so organized that it just flows smoothly. This is something I tell both men and women to do. Organize the mechanics of life so that they don't overwhelm you, because they have a tendency to do that. So however much we use online apps, it still has a tendency to overwhelm you. Get that out of the way, and then you have all the time to think and be a greater person. Don't waste time on envy or self-pity, and for heaven's sake, don't believe anything you read on social media. You always see smiley people dating beautiful other people, whatever, men or women, and everyone having a jolly good time. Now, if you notice, all of us have got what is called social media disease, which is this ease smile which comes, or even kids have it. The moment the camera comes, everyone shows all their 32 teeth, right? So please believe that people on social media are just putting up a face. And now that I get older, I realize what Zuckerberg has done. He has built the largest platform in the world, which 2 billion of us use, built on envy. Think about it. Social media is actually built on envy, right? And please remember that. So when you see people having great fun on social media, believe me, that's possibly just put on for the camera. Life and happiness is comparative, not absolute. I have to give you a bit of gyan here. When I was diagnosed with cancer in 2015, just after my mom passed away, she was ill for about 7 years. She had dementia, and then she passed away. And 10 days later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I went through a couple of hairy days because I was, wondering what's going to happen and why the hell, why me, all the stuff we go through. And then I realized I was working at that point. So I had 100 employees, I had my whole family, I had all the strong men in my life who kind of collapsed. So I said, okay, let me get my act together. And I actually did. And I'm not boasting about this, but I managed my cancer. Cancer is a very, very boring disease. I hope none of you get it. It bores you to tears because it just goes on and on and on. And unless you manage the damn thing, it subsumes you and you start worrying. Of course, I didn't do Dr. Google at all. My son made me promise I wouldn't do that. But I actually managed my cancer. And that's a great lesson. When you go through these bad things in life, and all of us do, manage it. Break it into small tasks and find solutions to little problems. The big problems kind of resolve themselves. So after 11 months of treatment, I was back without my hair. It just peeled off one day. But one amazing thing happened. I realized that I had the most perfect skull in the world. I think I mentioned it to all of you. I'd never seen my head. We never do, right? Because we always have hair on it. My hair just came off, and I have the roundest, it's like Ronaldo's football. Perfect, really perfect. I've never seen it before. And I was wondering whether to leave it like that and become a god woman. Huh? But then I said, okay, can't do that right now, so I grew my hair back. And now I'm the envy of all the men in my life because they're going bald and my hair is sprouting. So something nice did come out of everything. So life is comparative, and when I go through a piece of self-pity, which I do occasionally, my son tells me, please, Amma, be very, very grateful that all you had was a lump in your breast and you don't have a colostomy bag attached to you. So I think to myself, yes, it's true, and I could afford the treatment as well, which made all the difference. I have always competed with myself. I've always tried to be the best person I can, and I love that conversation that we just had, that even when you're going through a low, always educate yourself, always improve your skills. And this is something I tell everybody to do. Please continuously improve your skills. And I believe in formal educational qualifications. I think there's nothing like it. I actually went back to school when I decided to leave Saatchi, and I spent a year studying. So I went online, of course. I did courses at Wharton, I did courses at Columbia, and at MIT. I picked up digital marketing, I did analytics, I relearned my teaching techniques, I got on to independent directorships, I learned how to do all of that. And that's because I studied. And I was quite pleased with myself. At 60, the gray cells were still working, so that was good, right? Made me pretty happy. I have learned more from failing than winning. So my 7th piece of advice to you is to embrace failure. And we are so scared of it in this country. We only celebrate success. We never celebrate failure. And I think failure gives you the greatest learning. I have failed many times. For example, entrepreneurship. I realized that I had white-collar blood running in my veins from my family of teachers and academicians and government servants. I didn't have what Mukesh Ambani has. I just didn't have the guts. I'm sorry, I thought of a rude word, but I shall not use it in public. I just didn't have what he has. So I said, all right, I cannot ever afford a Lamborghini. So I bought myself a little role model and I kept it in my office with the doors open, right? So that's me. So I think you should fail. If we don't fail, we don't learn, and we become what in Sanskrit we call kupastha mandukam, which is big frogs in little ponds. And that's a very sad state of being. Knowledge is power. You may ask how. I have always been in a male-dominated industry. In our days, the ratios were, in IIM, I think I was 1 to 100. Which was interesting because I had 103 potential boyfriends, which was great fun. Everyone made a lot of me. But I realized that if I was going to get anywhere, I needed to know more than everybody else in the room. And that's what I did. When I was in construction for a bit. I ran an interior design firm for about 7, 8 years. I was out in the field. I never had the problems that you were talking about. I used to put on my cap and a big pair of shoes and get into the field. And I knew as much about interiors, measurements. I taught myself architectural drawing. I'm not an architect. I was an MBA. And I taught myself all of it. I went into the field. I was managing my family factory, which was into wood paneling and stuff like that, packaging. I did it all. And I never had, frankly, and this was 30 years ago, right, before there were so many women around, I never felt this, because when I went into the room, I knew more about things than anyone did. And it has always been my motto that I got where I am not because I am a woman, but because I was the best blinking person for the job. And I want all of you to follow that. Do not take the easy way out. It's very easy to say I'm a woman and I should get all these concessions. Yes, you have a different life, understood. But be the best person for your job, and that only comes with being current, professionally, technically, and digitally. All three are equally important. I've talked about never stopping to learn. Keep looking outside your comfort zone and see what else there is you can do with your life. The moment I dropped Sachi from my name card, the whole world opened up to me, because till then people saw me as an advertising person. And suddenly after that, when I removed that from my name, I became a strategic thinker. I was actually doing that all along, but because I was in advertising, I got paid for the poster rather than for what I brought to the table in terms of my knowledge. Right? So I decided, let me just explore. And I'm really exploring. I'm enjoying myself at 63. I'm behaving like a 24-year-old. And the difference is that I don't have student loans to pay back. So I can just have fun with whatever I'm doing. And if I don't like someone, I just avoid them. I don't need to kowtow to clients anymore, which is a great thing. I just love that. Another bit of advice, and this I give to everybody that I speak to. Don't get overawed by these so-called smart talkers that abound in today's world, especially in the corporate world, right? They talk and they talk and they talk and they say nothing. Don't be one of those. But most of us, when we see these so-called smart people, we become Barbie dolls or Ken dolls, as the case may be, right? Don't be one. Learn to communicate. And this is a skill, and I'm not saying this because I am a communication professional or a communication teacher. Learn to communicate through whichever media, and then communicate. Please build a point of view. People appreciate a point of view. You don't need to ram it down people's throats. You don't need to be an activist about it, but have a strong point of view and learn to communicate. So whether it is with clients, with labor, learn the language, speak to them. I've never had this problem of them treating me like an inferior woman, ever. And I've always been in men-oriented fields, always, all right? For the ladies, and in today's world, especially for the young women in this room, don't do anything that makes you uncomfortable. Have your Lakshman Rekhas very clear. You are not one of the boys, please don't try to be. And follow your gut on this one. This is what has kept me safe for the last 45 years that I have been working, right? It has kept me so safe. I've traveled all over the world. I've done everything I wanted to do, but I've always kept myself safe because I'm very clear about these Lakshman Rekhas. I don't let people into my Lakshman Rekha unless I want them to be there, right? So be very clear about your boundaries. Now, I'm going to say the same thing to the young men in this room, because in today's world of posh and all the other stuff that's happening, and this is my frank opinion, nothing against any woman, I think men are being treated very, very unfairly. And I think all the laws, being the mother of a son myself, I think all the laws are weighted against the men. Whatever the historical reasons, I'm not getting into that, but I'm saying in the current scenario, and I had this talk with my son, which was very strange, you know. I didn't do the birds and the bees, but I talked to him about Lakshman Rekhas. And I think this is something all of us need to be very conscious about, because there's some very, very ugly things happening out there. And just like there are unscrupulous men, ladies, and forgive me for saying this, there are some very unscrupulous women as well, who actually take advantage of a lot of this. So both sexes, be very, very clear about this. There are no shades of gray in this area of sexual harassment and all of it. Please be very careful about that. Always have a dream and a plan A, B, C, D, and now after COVID, my plans have gone up to Z. Be realistic, be flexible, be resilient, and be persistent. I remember when I was, 20, 21, my dream was to probably become a maths professor, because that's the family profession, teaching. I'd have possibly done a PhD in mathematics and been a teacher, a professor in a college. What I didn't expect was my father dying the next day, the day I finished my degree. And that's when I shifted into accounting. I'm a trained accountant. And I realized that I had to run the family business because we had to eat. And army officers' pensions, peanuts, right? So we had to eat. And I had my younger brother to support. And my mom, who was a dancer and an artist. So I realized that my plan B was to actually learn more about business. And then I got interested in it. And I joined IIM. Then I got married, like all of us want to. And Mills and Boon, those days we used to read a lot of those romance novels, right? So this hero, Prince, was going to come riding on a white charger and take me away, and we were going to live happily ever after. That didn't happen. I married a frog, who fortunately left me very soon with my little boy. Thank God. I was very, very grateful. See, God has his own strange ways. I don't know why he drops you into so much of a mess, but he does fish me out normally just as my nose is going under. I keep having these conversations with God, asking him why he's being so mean. Right now, I think he's very bored, poor fellow. We should get him a social media account, because he's figuring out, okay, now we finished this variant, so let me chuck the African variant at them. And then let me make Bangalore rain, right? And let me make the potholes bigger, whatever he does, right? So I think he's basically very bored. So pardon my blasphemy. I didn't mean to be blasphemous, but these are my conversations with God. My last bit of advice is to walk away when you have to and when you can. We always linger till it is too late. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a business we're running, whatever. We wait and we wait and we wait for things to get better. It's always better to do what they say in kite flying, bo kata re. Cut the umbilical cord with surgical precision, walk away, no regrets. I've done that several times in my life, and I think it's worked for me. You tend to linger, and especially women, we don't want to change status quo, right? So we have all these emotional bonds, especially if we have children. We don't want to give it up, right? And I believe that you have to walk away when the time is right, because sometimes it becomes too late and we are stuck somewhere where we don't want to be. And that's a large part of changing your narrative. Is it easy? Of course not. It's the toughest thing that you can do in the world, to walk away from a very comfortable corporate job. I felt that when I left Saatchi, right? I never got my monthly paycheck plonking into my bank every month, right? It's a frightening thing. It's frightening to walk away from the familiarity of a relationship, however bad it is. It's difficult to walk away from a job which you're comfortable with. But my advice, walk away when you have to and when you can, not when you're forced to. And this is a principle that I've followed all my life. I'm going to end with a very strange thing. I don't drink, by the way. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I'm a vegetarian all by choice, all right? My choice. I also dress the way I do. One is because I like being ethnic. Secondly, it hides my large bottom and stomach, right? Okay. So this is the serenity prayer of the Alcoholics Anonymous. And I believe that this is something we should all learn to live in this VUCA world, as we call it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, has been my philosophy. Life can be a pain, it can also be a delight, it depends on how you look at it. I always look at it as a learning. Face situations, and your strength of character is how you face these horrible situations. God is going to throw you curveballs. I hope not too many, but he is going to throw you curveballs. And how you face them with grace and dignity is your strength of character. And that's something you all need to build. Don't weep and wail and moan and whine. There's nobody to hear you but you. And it makes you even more miserable, believe me, because I've gone through all these situations. And I want you to look at something very positive. If life had no problems, how boring it would be, right? So, as Frank Clark says, if you can find a path with no obstacles, it probably doesn't lead anywhere. And on a lighter note, why do you think all our NRIs keep coming back to India every year? Right? They die, they're all waiting for the flights to open. Why do they come back? Because they love the chaos that we live in. We Indians thrive on chaos in Jugadi. They miss the potholes and the cows and the pigs and the human beings and all the stuff we live with, the noise, everything. So then they go back and they feel very superior, right? But they come here because life is so boring abroad, which is one of the reasons I never migrated. I love my country and I love the chaos. I hope we can make it better. I think we're all trying to do our little bit, but I think it's a great place to live in. So thank you. And as my son says, may the force be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Malika. That was just brilliant, and it was a total joy listening to you speak. Thank you very much.